Patrick here, Half Cheetah Will View. Welcome to Dollar Theater. Dollar Theater is an ongoing series that our good friend Hobbs Horace started, and that is when we watch and review films that we've gotten for $1.25 or less. So the movie I'm going to be talking about today is from 2022, and that is Devotion. Devotion stars Jonathan Majors as Jesse Brown, who was the first black naval aviator to serve on a carrier, and it was about his wingman and his friend Thomas Hudner, and about their relationship over a course of a year. Um, yeah, so this movie's really strong, and it's funny. It's funny because how they're describing it is, a story from America's forgotten war, which was the Korean War. We don't really talk about the Korean War. One, because technically it's still going on. They never had a peace treaty. Two, because we didn't win necessarily. So we tend to forget the wars that we don't win. And what's really ironic about this is a beautiful story about two men who overcame a lot of obstacles to become friends and what they would do for each other. And and the movie itself was made for on a budget of $90 million, and went out there and got crushed. Only made $21 million back. Probably because nobody really have ever heard of Jesse Brown or Thomas Hudner. That's really what it is. No one remember them. Um, this movie was actually based off a book that was written called Devotion, an epic story of heroism, friendship, and sacrifice by Adam Makos, which talks about the relationship. And in the film, it explores it in more detail. So the movie itself starts off with Thomas Hudner, played by Glen Powell. He gets transferred into a fighter group, Naval Fighter Group 32, based off the USS Lady, and so he wants to, he was 4 months. The war ended 4 months before he graduated from the Naval Academy. So he wasn't able to fly into the big show, as they call World War II, the big show. So none of the pilots had actually seen the big show, but but you know, but they talk about it, and so now they're in peace. But now it's the beginning of the Cold War, and so but yet the Cold War is still going on here in America. As we find out, like I said, Jesse Brown is the first black naval aviator, 1950, 1950, 19 or 1949. And throughout the movie, we find out exactly how hard how hard it was for him to get his wings. It was very hard for him to get his wings. He was a very gifted pilot. I dare say, probably just as gifted as probably the gruesome twosome. Um, I dare say. Um, though it was though he had overcome not only the his own fear, his own is he good enough to the Navy personnel who try to sabotage his career and including putting his life in danger. Um, so we meet Thomas Hudner transfers in, and as he goes inside his locker room area, he hears what he thinks is some arguing. Hears some loud angering, some words. And at first he's going to get involved, but then he says, I'm just my first day here. I'm just going to go ahead and just, go outside, meet the guys. And then later on he meets Jesse Brown, and they're going to become wingmen. Um, I mean, Jesse has more experience than Hudner, so Hudner is Jesse's wingman. So that's his job, is to guard Jesse's back in any combat situation, even though he outranks Jesse. Um, so, and we see the various training they do. They do training. They're flying Bearcats. Bearcat was a plane that was created to fight in World War II, and it got a few missions underneath its belt, but not too many before the war ended. But the Navy was still flying it. In fact, a lot of the same planes that the Navy used during World War II at this time were still being used in the Korean War, uh, in the Korean War, such as the Corsair and the P-51 and the Sky Raider made its first appearance during the Korean War. B-29s, B-17s. Um, so there's a lot of planes that were being prop planes that were being used before the Sabre came on board. Now it does show that VF-32 switched over from Bearcats to Corsairs, and Corsairs were a great plane. It was the fastest prop plane in World War II for the United States. It flew at 446 miles per hour, and it operated the R-2800 double wasp engine, which was a beast of an engine. It was the strongest prop engine that was created during the war. But the Corsair also had a lot of power, and you had to be really delicate with it, because if you didn't, you could lose the plane really quick. It was a great plane, but it was a little tricky to fly, and the boys have to go out there and they have to get carrier qualified. That means they have to go out there, fly the Corsair around, and land on the carrier. And so Hudner does his. He lands it first. He hits it no problem. He hits the ball. But Jesse has a little bit of trouble, and he misses out. He has to go around after his first attempt. Comes back around, and he makes his carrier landing. So they're successful. And then they're on their way to the Mediterranean to pose, to posture, demonstrate, so to speak, against the Russians, saying, hey, we're still here, we're here backing up our NATO allies. And during that time, one of the men in the fighter group, he volunteers to go up to test a gyro out on one of the airplanes, and he crashes on landing, and he dies. And of course, it really shakes the fellas up a lot. A really cute interlude. I'm not sure this is true or not, because it's based on true stories. I'm not sure how much this is all 100% true or not. But they did have an interesting little segment where they show the guys in the squadron getting some leave time, and they went to France, and supposedly Jesse Brown met Elizabeth Taylor. And Elizabeth Taylor, he was looking all spiffy in his naval uniform. And even though he got some heat from some Marines, some narrow-minded Marines there, Elizabeth Taylor liked Jesse and invited him over to a casino that she was at her hotel she was in. At first, the French weren't going to let him in. And that was interesting right there. It is interesting. He was facing the same racial barriers in France as he was at home. But he surprises everybody, including Thomas, by speaking fluent French. And he tells the two gentlemen at the door that Elizabeth Taylor put him on the list. And so, lo and behold, he's right. So they go in there, and they have a nice time with Elizabeth Taylor and whatnot. And then we find out that they're going to, of course, Korea. Now Thomas had already met Daisy, and that was Jesse's wife. He met her, and on his way to becoming a friend, and she tells Thomas to, just to watch over him, just look after him, and so he does that. He's going to do his very best. So they get to Korea, and sure enough, the action's already hitting hard and heavy, and pretty soon, Fighter Squadron 32 is now called into the fight. Now, again, I don't know if this is part right here. I mean, I'm not sure. I guess I could, if you could read the book, I'd like to read the book. And this is something, because if this didn't happen in this, if this is just made up for the story, boy, would really be disappointing for me to find that out. Well, one of the key parts of the movie is when they're conducting a raid on some bridges, and they're trying to, they can't fire back on the Chinese soldiers. They're under strict conditions not to fire on the Chinese because they don't want to provoke them into coming into the war. So they're only allowed to attack North Korean targets, and that includes some bridges. So even though they're being shot at by the Chinese, they're not allowed to retaliate. Well, the firing's so hard, and it looks like that they make a run on some bridges, and they do some damage, but they had one bridge is still up. So they're saying, well, we'll just come back and get it another day. And then Jesse breaks formation and disobeys a direct order to not do that and to fly and destroy the bridge. When they get back to the carrier, Thomas has to write out the mission. Has to write out the mission report, and in it he writes about the incident. Jesse's got called in, and basically, it was an act of insubordination. He could have lost his career right then and there. As it was, he did lose it in a sense. He says that because of that, he'll never get promoted. And of course, and Thomas is right, and Thomas is right saying, but it was what it was. You did exactly what I said, and you broke you didn't listen to my order. I did tell you not to do that, and you did it anyway. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. I would have to read the book, which I'm planning on doing because I'm very interested in that, because they showed the same thing happening on the Tuskegee Airmen, Red Tails. They showed that in Red Tails too, when a group of fighter pilots for the 332nd, they were told not, the commanding officer of a flight told, there's two incidences. One, he says, we're gonna bomb these trains, and then one pilot was told not to do it because it was too dangerous, but he did it anyway. And then another one, there's another scene where they're supposed to be attacking a base, and pilots left that and flew off on their own to attack a German pilots. That's not what their mission was. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I can tell you this, that black aviators were under more intense pressure than anybody else. World War II, Korea. I just cannot, I know Hollywood being Hollywood, I just cannot fathom either time in either instances where the African American pilot would disobey a direct order because the ramifications of that was just too great at that time period. You still get in trouble today, but it wouldn't be like you lose your entire career, be mustered out, slammed from promotion. You would suffer serious consequences, but you still, if you're gifted enough, you still would be able to at least have a career. These men, they were under so much underneath the microscope that you just can't fathom them breaking the rules like that because the risk would be too great. They would lose their plane. They wouldn't be able to fly anymore. So I can't really speak to the action or what happened to Jesse Brown was true or not unless somebody else knows. If somebody knows, drop it down in the comments below. But this is sometimes that happens a lot during these type of movies, these historical movies. They show somebody doing something quite like that just it doesn't fit because there's just too much risk involved. There was more risk to Jesse for flying to destroy those two bridges. There was more risk to him getting in trouble for that than him flying the mission itself. If he can get that, his chance. He was going to get so. Then of course we see the men are fighting, and some Marines are trapped in the chosen reservoir, and they're in a bad spot, and so the Navy's going to go in there and do a fighter sweep, and try to clear a path so the men can get out, they can break out of the pocket they're in, and so this is the climatic fight of the movie, and they fly and. as they're flying, we see that the Marines that have been giving Jesse hell pretty much throughout the movie, well, they see him flying close to the ground on their behalf, trying to save their lives. Now they're, and so he it's a moment, it's a moment where you look at it, the person you've been mocking all this time is up there risking his ass to save your ass right now. A good scene. It was a good scene. Um, so Jesse's his plane is hit, and so Thomas gets behind him, and they're flying. First they thought it was a fuel leak, but it's actually an oil leak, which was worse, because he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it back to the carrier or behind friendly lines. And so they pretty much stay with Jesse, and he's going to try to attempt a crash landing. So he has to empty out all his plane's munitions and drop tanks, and he lands on the he lands his plane, and he finds a spot to land, and he lands. It's a hard landing. And they're flying, and they're like, they're behind enemy lines, and Thomas says, I'm gonna go get him. That's his wingman. That's his friend. So he, in turn, he crash lands his Corsair next to Jesse. Unfortunately, Jesse was critically wounded during the landing, and he's trapped in the plane as well. So, and it's very, very cold, very, very cold. And Thomas does what he can to get him out, but he's just trapped. And one of the scenes that just we see earlier that a helicopter pilot that went through flight school with Jesse lands on a carrier, and he sees Jesse, and he says he recognizes him, and he goes up there. He says, he says basically, so I'm proud to have flown with you. I'm proud that you're doing, he's his friend. As a white pilot, it's his friend, and he's saying, we went through this together, and here you are, you're flying fighters, and I'm doing helicopter work, but they're still friends. And so what happens is that they're trapped, and it's at night, it's cold, enemies everywhere, and they can't get them out. And this Jesse's friend hears about it, and he says, "Who's down?" And he says, "Brown's down." Jesse's Brown. He says, and they're trapped, and they no helicopters can go up there because it's just too hard. And Jesse's friend says, "I'll do it. Tell him I'm on my way." And he flies his helicopter to help out, but unfortunately, Jesse died of his injuries. So right after the helicopter got there, and they still couldn't get him out of the helicopter. They had to go, and so we flash forward, and we see that Thomas Hudner, he won a Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions in trying to save his friend and his co-pilot. And he dresses up. He gets the medal from President Eisenhower, and during the ceremony, and he sees Daisy sitting down there. And this was a really powerful moment too. Small moments like this really stick out to me. But we see Thomas Hudner. He's walking toward Daisy, and he reaches up to he's got his Congressional Medal of Honor, and he yanks it off. He doesn't feel like he deserved it. He didn't succeed. His friend still, he died. He's still in North Korea. He didn't feel like he did it. He felt like he let it, and so he sat there and he tells that to Daisy, like, "I'm sorry, I couldn't save him." And Daisy says, "I didn't ask you to save him. I just asked you to look out for him. No one needed to save Jesse from anybody. He didn't need to be saved." And it was a really powerful and poignant moment. And so we and then they do a flyby, for a missing man, and they fly, and Daisy's on the beach with their daughter, and they look up and they see Thomas in his Corsair, and he's flying the missing man formation. And so And we find out at the end of the movie that that Thomas Hudner spent all his life trying to organize to rescue his Jesse's remains from North Korea. He tried up till his death in 2017, and that Hudner and Jesse's families, Hudner's family and Jesse's families remain friends up to this day, today. And Jesse's body has never been recovered. So I'm deep diving this. So for this one, but this is definitely one of the better films I've seen. Jonathan Majors and Glen Powell are just excellent in this film, top notch. I mean, I know what happened with Jonathan Majors, but by God, this should not be enough to derail his career. If that is allowed to happen, and people have gotten away with a hell of a lot worse. I just gives me it just. I'm not saying what he. There's no excuse for what he did. There's no defending it. He went through the legal system. He's paying his dues for what he did. Hopefully, he comes out of it a better man. But he should not lose his career over it. He should not. And I hope that he doesn't. I hope that he is able to. I hope that people will give him some roles, because he was a very good actor. Not only was he outstanding in Devotion, but he also was outstanding in Creed 3. I have not seen him as Kang yet in the MCU, so I can't speak to that. But the two movies that I've seen him act in so far, I've enjoyed very much. Hats off to two other actors. I gotta say this. I got two other actors too. Thomas Sadowski as Lieutenant Commander Dick Savoli, who's a real was the commanding officer of the fighter squad. Thomas Sadowski did a great job, and believe it or not, and that was Serinda Swan who played Elizabeth Taylor, and she's beautiful. She played Medusa in the Inhumans. Which didn't last for very long, but she was good in that. She also did a movie called Recoil with Steve Austin and Danny Trejo. She was really good in that as well. I recommend this movie highly. Glen Powell is now going to. He's an old-fashioned movie star. They have made him an old-fashioned movie star. He has made the right movies at the right time. And slowly but surely, he has built up his he's gotten bigger and bigger, more glossier roles. And of course, he had a major hit this year with the romantic comedy. What was the comedy he did? Anyone But You. And that was a major hit, and people are looking, including myself, we're looking forward to seeing what happens with Hitman. And he also did Top Gun Maverick too. So yeah, and my copy of this has no special features, which is a really bummed out. If I can get this, I got this as a rental copy. I got my copy at the library, as some of you guys may know. In this, but no special features on that. All right, well, this was going to be like the record-setting on my Monday dollar theater, but I think it's worth a little bit of a deep dive, and I hope you stuck with it, and I hope you get the movie too. Hope you buy the movie, not stream it, but buy it. It's because it's worth having in your collection. Definitely, if you're a movie fan, and you should really want to get this in your collection. This is a very good movie, and you'll enjoy it for years to come. All right, that's it for this. If you're new to the channel, please consider giving us a sub. Drop a comment down below. Let us know if you've seen Devotion or not. And we will see you next Monday for the next one. Thanks so much, and peace.